Well, welcome back to my office. I'm Dr. Doug Cowan, and we are taking this adventure together, learning how to crack the ADHD code, trying to find the secrets of ADHD in order to help those that we love with ADHD. It might be your child, teenager, your spouse, it might be yourself. And as we enter this new part of the journey, we are looking at the different types of ADHD. And I identify 5 different types. That's an easy way to sort of organize this. As we said in the last video, there are 2 main groups. There's slower type and there's 2 fast type. There's hypoactive ADHD and there's hyperactive ADHD. And each is different. Each responds to medication differently. Each has different systems in the brain that are impacted differently, and then we can move that into subgroups of 5 different types. And as we said in the last video, I use characters from the 100-Acre Forest, from the Winnie the Pooh stories to identify the 5 different types over the last 30 years. This has served me and the families I've worked with very well. So we have Winnie the Pooh that we're going to talk about today in this video. We have Tigger, impulsive hyperactive. We have Piglet, who has very rigid thinking. We have Piglet. Did I say him already? We have Rabbit with very rigid thinking. We have Piglet, who's nervous and anxious and worried and has like anxiety. And Eeyore, who is depressed. And to some degree or another, there's some percentage of people under the umbrella of ADHD who are fit into one of these 5 categories. So today we're going to look at Winnie the Pooh. We're going to look at inattentive ADHD. And this type of ADHD is found more in girls than in boys. It tends to be a little bit slower acting, slower processing information, tends to be late for stuff a lot, but can be very nice, very social, very popular even. Just once you put them in a time test environment or in a boring classroom situation, it can be very, very difficult for them to be successful. So let's talk about Winnie the Pooh type of ADHD, this inattentive type of ADHD. So Winnie the Pooh is the classic picture of inattentive ADHD, right? Pooh's lovable, he's very kind, he's very social, but Pooh is also inattentive, sluggish, slow-moving, unmotivated, at times unmotivated to get done what really needs to be done as opposed to something that's more fun. This is that hypoactive type of ADHD. He's the classic daydreamer, often seems to be in this brain fog. This is the inattentive, hypoactive type of ADHD. Now, classically, people with this type of ADHD, this inattentive type, they're easily distracted by the shiny thing in the room. They have short attention spans to a task, especially if it's not interesting to them or it's hard. So think about chores. Think about the math worksheet. Think about boring. If it's boring, it's very difficult to get it done. They are often daydreaming when other people are talking to them. They're always looking for things that they've put down somewhere and just can't remember where they put it. They're always late. Now, we will have an entire video series just on the function of the frontal lobes and working memory. Working memory, part of the executive functions of the frontal lobes. And one of the classic things about working memory is knowing where you put stuff, knowing the information you need in order to get your job done, and knowing what time it is. When you can really kind of estimate how long it'll take to do something, when you can get out the door 5 minutes early and you can go to appointments and be there 5 minutes early, that's working memory function. When you're working memory, when this front part of your head isn't working as hard as it ought to, then you get these working memory deficits, and that shows up as they're just really hard to get out the door, easily bored. And you know what? When you put people like this under a workload, for example, you you put them in a chair and you give them a math worksheet, very commonly they will fall asleep because of the way the front part of their brain is functioning. It's just underactive. And I'm going to show you a slide of that. Let me show you a slide of that right now. So what you see in this slide are two brains. These are Spec Scans of human brains, which means it's not looking at actually like the holes you see in the brain are not actual holes in somebody's head. It's a deficit of electrical activity or a deficit of blood flow in that particular part of the head. So you got two brains here. You have your basic healthy brain, and we have the frontal lobes are circled there. And then next to it is the inattentive ADHD brain. And you see the deficits in different parts of the brain. And again, the deficit areas of functioning, depending upon where it is, you get the different types of ADHD. What I want you to notice in the slide is what's circled up at the front part of the brain. These are the frontal lobes, left side, right side, and there's a tremendous deficit in activity that's going on in that part of the brain. And so that impacts working memory. It impacts all the executive functions of the brain. Where did I put stuff? What time is it? Where am I going? And that's a picture of the brain under a workload. So when it's not under workload, then it may look very much like a healthy brain. But under workload, instead of shifting into second gear and third gear and fourth gear, it stalls. That's the best way I can tell you. And so then it runs at a deficit, and it makes it much harder not only to get work done, but also to stay awake while you're trying to do the work. So again, for the normal brain, under a workload, the brain picks up speed. It does whatever it needs to do in order to do the function. And particularly here in the front part of the brain, you get the working memory. You've got executive functions that are working as they need to be working. And not so in the ADHD brain. Under a workload, it stalls out. It just goes the wrong direction. So it works at less hard, and you get these deficits. Again, attention deficit disorder is what it's known by. So at rest, the brain can look really normal, but under the workload, kind of wants to go to sleep. And so it's not uncommon for a kid to need to get up and move around and do whatever, or find something more interesting for them to do. So we've seen this lots of times, hundreds of times with kids wired up to EEGs, and I've also seen them fall asleep under a workload and not be able to wake them up, have to go get their parents to go wake them up because they're in such deep sleep from that. So this type of ADD, again, 20% respond to stimulant medications, 60%, respond like day and night difference. 60% you get okay, that's not bad. That's a good difference. And 20% have bad reactions to stimulant medication. So there may be other interventions that work well. Winnie the Pooh does real well in counseling, where people are teaching them skills in how to focus better and longer. But they don't respond as well to medication as Tigger will, and we'll talk about that in another video coming up. I just jotted down another couple of thoughts that I want you to know about people with this type of Winnie the Pooh ADHD, this inattentive, hypoactive type of ADHD. The strengths that they often carry, not always, but often carry, is they like people. They can be very social. They can be very good with other people, even if they don't pick up on the subtle social cues from their peer group. It's pretty common. But they can be very social, very kind, very caring people. They can be also very good with animals. They can be good with art. They can be creative people, given that time to just sort of sit and be creative. They can be remarkable in some cases. And they can be very successful at individual sports. Let me talk about sports just for a minute. If you have children or teenagers, this is an important kind of thought. There are some sports that a child, teenager with Winnie the Pooh type ADHD can excel in, and other sports, not so much. So I coached baseball. I've coached baseball at every level except professional baseball. I've coached at a university for 4 years. I coached at high school for 4 years, Little League forever. And And I'll just tell you, they don't do well in the outfield. Just wouldn't do that. You take an entire baseball game, 2-hour baseball game, 2.5-hour baseball game, even a 3-hour baseball game, you don't get more than 15 to 18 minutes of actual things happening in a baseball game in that 2.5-hour period of time. So to put a child like this, a teenager like this in the outfield, it's not going to work well. So they need to play, for instance, in the infield somewhere, and pitcher and catcher are really the best if they can do that because they're really active on every single pitch that happens. Soccer, maybe not. You have been out in the soccer field and you've seen kids with this type of ADHD. Some of them do really well, and some of them just forgot where they were as the play went past them. But individual sports can be great, and this can be everything from playing tennis to swimming. Martial arts can be very good. There are a number of individual sports that people with this kind of brain profile can really, really excel in. So keep that in mind as well. They tend to do well in people jobs, not necessarily detailed jobs, people jobs. So they could be the real estate agent who is selling every home in your community, but has to hire somebody really to work on the details of the contract. And that's fair. Why not? It can be the person who's great at marketing, creative in doing the websites, but hires a designer to actually make it happen, hires a programmer, a website builder to actually do the coding and so on. And again, with all these different types of ADHD, Dan Sullivan, who may be America's leading business coach, he says in his 40 years of doing business coaching that 60% of the entrepreneurs that he has worked with over the last 40 years have ADHD. 60%. Why? Because they're just a little bit different, a little bit more creative, can be more creative. Just never give up. Just kind of do it till it's done. All of these characteristics. So it's a two-edged sword. It can be really, really good for somebody. It can be really, really hard for somebody, especially in a classroom situation. So the opportunities for people with Winnie the Pooh type ADHD, people jobs, big picture, visionary kinds of jobs, whenever the vision is more important than the details, that kind of job, they can be very, very good at it. The threats for them, the difficult things for them to manage, get them bogged down in details. It can be twice as hard, 3 times as hard for them to just sort of slog through the details of numbers and certain kinds of homework and whatever than somebody who doesn't have ADHD. Just not that they can't do it. It just takes them a lot longer to work on it so they can get bogged down in the details, bogged down in reports, bogged down in accounting, and easily distracted by shiny things. So they can start a dozen projects and not necessarily get them done. But in business, be the kind of person who can be visionary with a dozen projects and then hire people to get them done. And so these people can do very well if they can channel the creativity and the big awareness, big vision kinds of things of this Winnie the Pooh type of ADHD into business. It can work really well. So mom, dad, fight the good fight. See if this is the type of ADHD your child has, and if so, then focus, target your treatment for this type of hypoactive Winnie the Pooh type of ADHD.